I'd like to tell you a story. When I was 24, I lived in a small town called Naples in Florida. I lived there when I was 24 years old, and I was the only deaf person in that area. The closest deaf person was actually 2 hours away. All the friends and family, all the friends and acquaintances I had there were hearing, but I enjoyed that. But lucky for me, Naples, Florida was home to many US Olympians. I had the opportunity to go play with them and practice with them all the time, whether it was indoors at the gym or at the beach. And I actually happened to be very good at volleyball. I'd go play every day, every week. And I remember a friend pulled up some chairs by the water and we watched the sun go down and chat. He looks over me and asks me the question, do you the question completely blew me away. I've never heard this question in my 24 years of life. He asked me a question that was simple. He said, have you ever wished that you could hear? I looked at him and I thought for a second, I asked, where did that come from? It took a moment and I realized that we had been sitting here. He could hear the waves crashing and coming in, and I couldn't hear that. Obviously, I couldn't. My entire world was silent. To the left, people were playing volleyball. To the right, people were cheering. And there was a mother with her baby, and cars and ATVs that were driving all around with many noises. And I was quick to answer, and I said, no, I never wished that I could hear. I love the person that I am. And you may be wondering why I love myself or how I could love myself. Well, first, I was born deaf. That's all I knew in my childhood. And that was my only perspective and experience in life. And many things that I encountered, many people that are hearing never have been through that. It's something that I cherish and that I've always been deaf. I accept myself and the experiences I had. I walked into a job interview with a panel of hearing interviewers, and I was approached at the meeting wishing I could interact with them. Do you think that went very well? Obviously not, right? Because in the back of my mind, I was focusing on the negative outcome before even the interview started. But instead, I used my difference as an advantage and an asset. I know that as a deaf man, I can offer that company many different things, but my experience growing up was very different from them. I can go in that meeting and confidently tell them all the multiple reasons that they would benefit of having a deaf person work for them. First thing I want to tell you is to learn how to love yourself. And one reason that have learned to love myself was the family I grew up in. I have two brothers that are deaf. My parents are deaf as well. My grandparents are deaf. Even my great grandparents are deaf. I'm the fourth generation in a beautiful family and large family of 25 deaf members. And I was born to deaf parents who understood the deaf experience, and they provided me with wonderful opportunities. One day, my parents gave me language and love and education. So, growing up, my life was perfect. And I imagine many of you that grew up, that are hearing and grew up with hearing parents, and I'm sure you thought your life was more normal, and that's the same way I thought. It was normal because I had deaf parents. I thought my world and my life was perfect. So when I grow up and it's time for me to go to school, I was enrolled in a deaf school. I would learn in an environment that was designed for me and with other kids that were deaf as well. The teachers were deaf, the superintendent was deaf, all my friends and peers were deaf, and in that environment, I could grow and learn a lot. So the deaf community and our world I thought was perfect to me. And I remember in the summer before fifth grade, I decided I want to go to public school. My parents thought I was crazy. My mom said, "Why would you want to go to public school?" I said, "I want to learn how all my hearing people learn. And I want to see what the classroom is like there." My mom said, "Okay, fine." And she enrolled me in public school. 2 weeks later, I came home and I told my mom, "Nope, I want to go back to the deaf school." And she said, "Nope, too bad." I was so shocked that she said that. She said that I needed to interact with hearing people and know how to interact with hearing people like when I go out into the real world. Because the world is hearing, that's the reality. And it's important to communicate with the people. So that year I learned a lot. I couldn't be involved in the school activities, and my friends never learned enough sign language to communicate with me. But I did want to join the basketball team, but the coach told me a deaf kid can never help the team win. So after a year, I went back to the deaf school, and I realized that's my home. And that's my community where I can thrive and reach my goals. And I joined back into the school organizations, and I joined the basketball team and helped them win many games. I went to that school through high school and graduated, and I went to the only deaf college, Gallaudet, in Washington, D.C., where I graduated and studied to be a mathematician. I wanted to teach math because I wanted to teach like my math teachers in high school that really sucked, and I wanted to be a good math teacher. I wanted to be a role model for the students that I would teach. So as it got closer to my graduation at Gallaudet, I, of course, was nervous, and I was like, am I making the right decision? And I started questioning myself, and I needed to just get out. I needed to travel. So when I finished, I went to 43 different countries. And it's a funny thing, when I traveled, and many people that I met were saying, "Nyle, you are so brave. How do you travel like this? How do you do it? Isn't it hard to be deaf and to travel?" No. Let me tell you, traveling as a deaf person, I think, is easier. Because sign language is something that can give you much more opportunities into the larger world. I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. I went to South Sicily pursuing a flea market, and I saw a man or woman ask a man where the meat came from. The Sicilian man could not speak English, and was gesturing. And you know how Italians gesture. He was trying, and it was going right over the head of the tourist woman. So watching this was very comical. I'm understanding everything perfectly that the Italian is saying. So I pull out a paper and a pen and I write it down and I show it to the woman, the tourist. And I was a translator between two hearing people. So that situation tells you that those two people are disabled, not me. Well, this story is ironic. It happens so many times to people I meet, and it's easy to always be amazed by those situations. I always tell myself I'd visit the deaf schools while I was traveling and to meet more deaf locals. But every time I visited a deaf school, what I saw was that their schools were in terrible condition. Their education was greatly lacking. I couldn't believe my eyes when I visited the deaf schools. When I would meet deaf adults, I realized a common thing very quickly. They either didn't have the same education as I did, and they were able to communicate. They'd often complain to me that the system had failed them. And I kept asking myself, why is this happening so often? And I've been so lucky and so fortunate to have that education. When I was growing up, I thought all deaf people had the same opportunities I had. And I decided to do some more research on the topic. And what I found was shocking. There are 70 million people in the world that are deaf, and only 2% of them have access to sign language, which means millions upon millions of deaf people are not receiving their language or education. And also learned that 75% of hearing parents do not communicate using sign language with their deaf children. That is amazing. I can't believe that. Without education or language, the children actually exhibit signs of brain damage. In research, I also found that 110 or 10% of deaf children come from deaf parents like mine, only 10%. I'm incredibly lucky to be part of that 10% that have an education, that have love and language. I had the parents that loved me and helped me succeed in my life. I wouldn't be who I am without them. So it's clear to me that something needs to happen and change. I got to work in setting up my own foundation, and our goal is to improving the lives of millions of deaf people around the world. We partnered with another deaf organization to introduce to legislation a bill that requires all deaf children to have access to education between the ages of 0 to 5. Because before the age of 5, children have the ability to learn another language, ready so they're ready for the classroom. After the age of 5, that critical language acquisition window closes. I'm working to give every deaf child a future and opportunities for that to not be postponed. The deaf community cannot do it alone. We need you to become our allies and join us in making the world a more knowledgeable community and fight for us, and we will fight for you. Our children today need to strive. Before this presentation, I want to teach you this. Before I'm done with this presentation, I want to teach you two signs: love and yourself. Okay, so follow me. Love yourself. Brilliant. A pluses all around. Thank you.